Hi, I'm Raphael Leah.
And I'm John Jackson, and welcome to the Mancave.
Okay, so today we're going to start with John talking the Knicks and the Nets.
Yeah, so not a lot of news on the Nets, but we do have a lot of news on the Knicks. So I'll get the Nets over with quick. They lost again. They lost to...
End of conversation.
Yeah, they lost to the Raptors, 112 to 100. They play the Cavaliers tonight. I don't know if they're going to fare well. Probably not. Cavs are really good, although the Cavs did lose really bad to Golden State on Monday.
Who doesn't lose to Golden State?
Golden State's really good. So, Knicks, though, they played on Monday as well, and they played a double overtime game with the 76ers.
Yeah.
But they won.
It took double overtime. I wouldn't call it a win.
It's a win.
A win is a win on the stat sheet, but I would not call that a moral victory.
It's definitely not victory. I'm sure it's not going to give them a lot of momentum going into this next game.
Oh, for sure.
The Knicks, they play the Jazz tonight as well. And just a few points from that game that they played on Monday. Porzingis did get hurt in the game, so that's something.
That's a big blow.
Yeah, that's definitely a big blow. Even if he does play in this game or one of the next games, you don't want him injured at all. He's just on absolute fire right now. You want to keep that up. He wants to keep that up for as long as possible. However, Porzingis has good news too. He's actually 4th in jersey sales across all of basketball, so he's really making a name for himself in his first year, and that's amazing. It really is.
It goes from fans that were booing his name at the draft to this now. You saw that picture with the little boy that was crying when he got drafted, and now he's just hugging.
Nobody's crying now.
Nobody's crying.
Knicks fans are not crying. He's come into the NBA. It's so amazing that
he's almost our age.
What he brings to the NBA
what
right now.
have we done with our life?
Yeah, really. I mean, it's just amazing what Porzingis has done so far.
And along that line, the Knicks have climbed to #1 in Forbes' most valuable basketball franchises. If I'm not mistaken.
In the league, they're ranked #1, so they are valuable. Of course, they're a New York team, so they're going to be ranked higher than most other teams. But that's all for basketball. You got some news over there about some hockey?
I have some news. We'll touch on hockey a little later on as well. But let's stick with New York hockey. We had last night the Rangers taking on the Canucks in New York at MSG. It took overtime, but the Rangers did get that win 3-2. JT Miller scored the game-winning goal in overtime. And that's big for the New York Rangers, who have been struggling as of late. And that puts them a point ahead of the Islanders for second place in the Metropolitan Division. We keep saying it, that in hockey, all you need to do is make the playoffs, then you never know what could happen. So I feel like that's what the Rangers need to do. You got to heat up at the right time, and you shouldn't really worry about having to make the playoffs as long as you keep winning games. It doesn't matter how they've been winning games. You just got to win games and then heat up at the proper time. That being said, they don't play again until Friday, and that's the same thing with the Islanders. The Islanders didn't play yesterday. They're not playing tonight. They're playing on Friday. So we'll see how the standings go after those two games.
That was a very good game that they had, because this is a game where they keep losing at the last minute in games. They keep getting tied up, but this time they were able to tie it up and then bring it into overtime.
That's something.
So they came from behind. So
that's something you don't expect. When I check the game in the third period and I see the Rangers are down, I tend to not think much of it because it tends to be a loss. That being said, when the Rangers have been up in the third period, that's also not been a safe thing to look at. But the fact that they won in a shootout recently. They just won in overtime. It's these kinds of wins that build morale for a team and will start to build momentum. They did lose to the Islanders at Barclays, but that game again, the Islanders have a better team than the Rangers, aside from goaltending. It's just the way they've been playing. Rangers have to heat up at the proper time. That's all for right now. We're going to touch on now
some baseball.
Baseball.
Free agents, there's still a lot out there. However, they have been signed a lot more rapidly now. Justin Upton now is signed by the Detroit Tigers, and that's a 6-year deal, and he gets over $100 million in that deal, which is actually pretty interesting because the Tigers, now we had a team that last year it looks like they're going to be rebuilding, but now they signed Jordan Zimmerman and now Justin Upton.
Older players.
Yeah, so now they built now their farm system. And now they're signing these older players, so we're talking about a team that may compete in that Central Division.
They want to compete.
They definitely want to compete. They have a high payroll now. A lot of players they signed, invested a lot of money into, so that's interesting.
It could bite them, but
yeah,
it could very well
hurt them or help them.
They could very well put up a fight in the Central, so that's going to be interesting.
But the interesting thing also, and what else I am going to talk about is Cespedes. The Detroit Tigers did want Cespedes, so they said after they traded him, they said we would be open to inviting him back, re-signing him. However, they didn't, and we had Cespedes and Justin Upton both, naturally corner outfielders, and they could have got either, but they signed Upton. So that could raise questions. Why didn't, Cespedes get signed by a team like that? However, most people know it's probably because Upton is 28, Cespedes is 30. That does play a big factor into it.
I would call Upton's ceiling a little higher than Cespedes, but Cespedes did have a season last year.
Yeah, so. He had a better season than Upton last year, with 100 RBIs compared to, over 100 RBIs compared to 81 RBIs. And 35 home runs compared to about 27 home runs.
Remember, Cespedes is asking for a larger contract, a long-term deal, but I don't think that would have bothered the Detroit Tigers. That they're obviously willing to spend money. So it's an interesting point.
But Cespedes now, they said he may decide in the next 24 to 48 hours where he wants to go. But the thing is now, a lot of teams are interested, but a lot of teams aren't really willing to give him the money. Or, maybe he wants more. Some teams are thinking maybe they could get him on a 1-year or 2-year deal. If they get him on a 1, then he has a chance to get a long-term deal next year when there's a weak free agent class. So we really don't know with Cespedes what's going on. We'll see where he gets signed, who signs him. It's going to be very interesting to see.
News could be heard very soon.
Yeah, although they did say that almost last week that it's going to be 24
I feel like now we're a month until pitchers and catchers report. I feel like now it's the time.
It's going to be sooner rather than later.
He's obviously going to find a team before spring training. He's not going to be one of those players that holds out. I don't think. Yeah, anything can happen. Yeah. But I don't think he's going to be one of those.
Because of his contract too, because he was signed out of Cuba, you don't have to give up a draft pick for him, because with these players like Upton, everybody who's given a qualifying offer, you have to forfeit your first-round pick. Unless you're a bottom 10 team, then that's protected. You forfeit a second-round pick and so on with all these players that you sign who got qualifying offers and declined them. So Cespedes is actually very valuable for that, but we'll see what happens with Cespedes and who signs him real soon. But moving on now, we have some more news.
We have some news in the NFL in regards to transactions, but we're not talking about players this time. We're talking about head coaches. We had plenty of head coach vacancies after every team. As one team got eliminated, another head coaching job seemed to have opened up. And we just started filling those positions recently. And we have some notable ones. We have Hugh Jackson, obviously, going to the Browns, along with Ben McAdoo. That's a big name, going to the Giants. We'll come back to him for a little bit. We have Chip Kelly, again, big name, going to the San Francisco 49ers. We have Dirk Kofer, who's going to the Buccaneers. We had Adam Gase going to the Miami Dolphins. I believe that's it. Oh, and Doug Peterson, I'm sorry, going to the Eagles. But I want to talk a little bit about Ben McAdoo, obviously being local, the most local of the head coaches to be signed. When they fired Tom Coughlin, I'm sure a lot of people thought that it's good. They want to rearrange the team, the way the team is heading.
Makes sense.
Then instead they decide to stick with their same offensive coordinator in Ben McAdoo. And that kind of, it sways away from popular opinion as to why to fire a head coach. You fire a head coach to go a different direction, then you hire the offensive coordinator as the head coach. It's kind of weird. But you have to understand, when they initially hired Ben McAdoo, they were hiring a man who they thought would become the head coach. I believe that was their goal in the beginning. They hired Ben McAdoo to groom him under Tom Coughlin. I don't think there was ever any question that he would be the head coach one day when Tom Coughlin was gone. If Tom Coughlin was 50 years old, he would not have been fired. The guy's 69 years old. It was going to happen. He was going to get fired. He's a great head coach. Don't get me wrong, but you have to see it from a Giants management perspective. They've had Ben McAdoo for a while now, just waiting for him to take over that job, and the fact that they went 10-6 for 2 straight seasons was a good excuse. Plus, Tom Coughlin, again, 69 years old. It was the perfect time. What did I say?
10-6. You're giving them too much credit.
Excuse me. 6-10. That was just a good excuse to get rid of Tom Coughlin. Obviously, he wasn't happy about it. You saw how he was responding to it.
Yeah.
But I really think that the one man who should have been fired, who isn't, was Jerry Reese. I mean,
it all goes back to him. He's
the one with the team. I mean, it was terrible. And Tom Coughlin's not a bad head coach. So when he's not able to perform, it can't be him.
If you give him the right players,
of course.
He's going to perform.
Listen, and you can speak all you want about Odell Beckham, but you can't just have Odell Beckham. They had no offensive line, so Eli has no time to throw to Odell Beckham. They have no defense.
No defense.
So as much as they score with Odell Beckham, they can't hold the lead.
And it's amazing they kept Spagnuolo, too. I mean, their defense has been terrible. Atrocious. However, Eli likes Spagnuolo, and Eli has a lot of say there.
Oh, of course.
And that's why Ben McAdoo is
That's why he's still there.
Because Eli wants him.
They were going to stick with the same guns all throughout. Tom Coughlin's firing was nothing out of the usual for the Giants. I'm sure everyone in the Giants organization expected it. Higher up in the chain. I don't know that Tom Coughlin really saw it coming. I'm sure he had to have.
No, definitely.
But I think it was a lot more in the making than people make it out to be. I don't think it was that big of a surprise to the organization themselves. We're going to move on now back to the NHL. We have a big story from the NHL.
Yeah. So the All-Star Game has some controversy. It's kind of interesting. Nobody really cares about a lot of the All-Star Games and, the Pro Bowl when it comes to football. It's not really interesting. However, this year it caught the headlines because the fans voted for John Scott. Now, if you don't know who John Scott is, you're not alone. He's actually a player who's not good. Definitely not deserving of an All-Star game. I believe he has no goals this season. Very few in his career in the many seasons he's played.
Long story short, he's not an all-star.
He's not an all-star. He's not even a good player. He's not even a starter. He actually got traded. So first he gets elected.
This is where we get our big controversy.
Yeah. So he gets elected to the All-Star game, then gets elected as captain. So, fans think it's funny, whatever the fans want to do. They started a Twitter handle for him or whatever, hashtag Vote John Scott. So he gets voted in as captain, and then he gets traded to the Canadiens, and then they immediately put him into the minor leagues, the AHL. They put him there, so he's disqualified now. After he's been elected to the All-Star game as captain, he's been disqualified from playing in the All-Star game. But now the fans weren't happy about that. The writers weren't happy about that because it's the fans' vote. So,
but you still think it's right that the fans could vote in a teasing manner and still get away with it if they hadn't?
It's the fans' vote, though. If they could put
but there's
stricter rules on it.
He's taking a spot away from a deserving All-Star.
Yeah, I know.
Forget about captain. I mean,
no, I agree.
Be in the All-Star
he doesn't
game.
deserve it, but the thing is, the All-Star game is not the All-Star game. It's a popularity contest at this point. And that's
He's not popular either.
He's popular now because he's been voted in. But anyway, so he was disqualified. The NHL, what they did instead now, they said, okay, you could play. You could play because the fans wanted you in and everything like that. So, it's kind of a good story, too, because he has a family, 2 twins on the way. And although he makes a lot of money, $700,000, it pales in comparison to the amount that some other players make. And he will get a chance of getting another $1 million if his team wins. But again,
I'm not-
700,000 is
I
plenty
get-
of money.
I give him no sympathy.
Yeah, I mean,
give
some
him no
people do
sympathy.
though. Some people.
I'm
do
sure
like
some
him,
people
so-
do, but
yeah.
so
those are
I'll
the
speak
rich
to.
people.
Let me speak to those people real quick.
Yeah.
He's not a doctor. He's not a lawyer. He's a hockey player.
A bad hockey player.
I'm not going to demote that because it takes a lot of skill. They earn the money they make.
Yeah.
But the same way as a doctor who is not a great doctor doesn't make as much as a world-class physician does, the same goes in any sport. He's not a great hockey player. He should not be getting paid like a great hockey player, yet he's still getting paid over what a doctor would be paid. So, I mean, you want to cry over him. You know, he has a family to support on only $700,000.
It's a lot of money.
You don't have to cry to me because I mean, he's taking a spot away from a deserving all-star. Listen, you can't undermine the fan vote. If you call it a fan vote, you can't undermine it. And what they tried to do was, without really saying it, that's why they demoted him, because they didn't want him to be an all-star. So they found a loophole. And listen, that's wrong. But what you're going to have to do now, I think what this should definitely insinuate to the National Hockey League, is you have to put in a system where fans get the vote, but you all overall have a panel that decides that they're proper to go in. Because if the fans have as much power as to vote John Scott into the All-Star game, they have too much power. Because the National Hockey League should be able to say, no, he's not an All-Star, he doesn't deserve an All-Star game, he should not be there. And they should, first of all, establish a ballot of players who should be allowed to vote in.
That's what they changed this season. They usually have a ballot, but, you know, again, all-star games in certain sports, aside from baseball, because they connected now home field advantage for the World Series, so that matters. But in football and the Pro Bowl, nobody watches it. Nobody watches the NHL All-Star Game. I mean, if you ask the average person, they wouldn't even know that the NHL has an all-star game.
Most people don't know when it is.
So what they did to get more viewers is, instead of having the ballot, they said you can vote for whoever you want. And then with the internet we have now, you have one person who says, hey, why don't we vote John Scott? And everybody's like, you know, that's a funny idea. Let's vote John Scott.
Yeah, and that's why it bites you, because now something that wasn't a big deal in your mind has become a controversy, and that's what's gonna happen. You can't do that. You can't just have fans voting for whoever they want. It's not gonna work. You're gonna have these discussions. You know, it's terrible. So nothing against John Scott, but come on, I'm not gonna.
Well, one of the writers says, have them play this season, because that's what they did. They put the rules out. You can vote for whoever you want. They voted for whoever they want. So what the NHL, what they could do next year is just have stricter rules, so you don't have another John Scott situation. However, he will play
in the All-Star game,
and this is because what the NHL did to themselves. And that's all we have for today.
And that's all we have to say about that. I'm Raphael Leah.
And I'm John Jackson. This has been the Man Cave.